There is a difference between a man who is grateful and a man who keeps score. Both of them know where they came from. Both of them will tell you, if you ask, that they owe everything to the people who were there before them. Both of them will say the right words in the right rooms at the right moments. From the outside, in a photograph, you cannot tell them apart. But put them somewhere real. Put them somewhere unscripted. Somewhere the cameras are running and the room is watching and something is not going the way they planned. And watch what comes out. The grateful man reaches back. He remembers where he came from, and it makes him humble. It makes him careful. It makes him the kind of man who walks into a room and sees the people in it as the reason he is standing, not as the audience for his standing. The man who keeps score reaches for a different thing entirely. He reaches for the ledger. He tells you what you owe him. He tells you the debt is old and unpaid, and that the people around him, the ones who cheered for him, who watched him, who bought the jersey and said the name and believed in what he was capable of, that those people did not do it out of love or pride or genuine human connection. They did it because it was a transaction. And the transaction, in his accounting, still has a balance due. The young man who sat across from me that morning was the second kind, and I want to be careful about how I tell you this story. Because the insult he leveled at me that morning was not the kind that comes from hatred. It was worse than that. It was the kind that comes from a man who has taken the love of a community, the real love, the deep and genuine and costly love of people who had very little and gave it anyway, and converted it in his mind into a debt, into something he was owed, into leverage. I have been a black man in America for 67 years. I know what it feels like to be loved by black people. I know what it costs them to give that love. I know the specific weight of it, the pride of a grandmother in Memphis who watches your show every morning before she goes to her job, the father in Birmingham who tells his son your name like it means something, the teenage girl in Chicago who laughs at your jokes and feels, for 22 minutes, like the world has made room for her. That is not a transaction. That is a gift. And the morning that young man sat across from me and told me I should be grateful, told me I owed him, because of that love, I understood, with a clarity I have rarely felt in 40 years of television, exactly what I needed to say. Today I am going to tell you 3 things. I am going to tell you who he was and what he said. I am going to tell you what moved through me in the silence before I answered. And I am going to tell you what I said, not the version that got clipped and shared and stripped of everything around it, but the whole thing, in the order it happened, with every word in the right place. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on the notification bell. If you have ever watched someone take the love of a community and call it a debt, you need to stay with me for every word of what comes next. Subscribe, then don't move. It was a Tuesday in mid-January in Atlanta. Marcus has been my stage manager for 11 years. He has a specific expression he gets when something is coming, not alarm, not worry, something quieter than both. A particular kind of stillness that means he has already seen the thing and is deciding how to tell me about it. He had that expression at 9:55 that morning. He said, "The guest in Bay 1. Darius Cole. He came in 40 minutes early, which I appreciated. Then he told the PA assigned to him that he did not want to do a sound check because he does not do sound checks. He told the segment producer that the questions she had prepared were, and I am quoting him directly, basic. He asked if you were going to be on time. He said it like it was a genuine concern. I asked Marcus how the rest of the pre-show team was responding to him. Marcus said, The way people respond to someone who is very large and very certain and has a great deal of money attached to his name. They are working around him. I told Marcus to stay close to the floor. Marcus said, "I have not left it." Darius Cole was 26 years old. He played wide receiver for an NFL franchise. He was 6'3", 215 pounds, built with the specific physical authority that comes from 10 years of elite athletic training. He wore a tracksuit that cost more than most people's rent, cream-colored, with his jersey number embroidered on the left chest. He had a chain at his collar that caught the studio lights and held them. He moved through the space the way a man moves through a space that he has already decided was built with him in mind. Not arrogant. Younger than arrogant. The kind of certain that has not yet been tested by anything it could not outrun or outspend. The audience that morning was 300 people. In the fourth row, slightly left of center, was a woman named Dorothy, 71 years old. She had taken a Greyhound bus from Memphis, Tennessee, 8 hours the night before, with her granddaughter, who was 19 and sitting beside her with their matching plastic bags of snacks from the gas station and their matching excitement, barely contained. That they were here. That they had made it. That this was real. Dorothy had her Sunday hat on. The kind of hat that means something. The kind you do not put on for ordinary occasions. She was sitting up straight, hands folded over her pocketbook, looking at the stage with the expression of someone who has waited a long time for something and intends to be fully present for every second of it. I noticed her the moment I walked on set. I noticed the hat. Lord forgive me, I did not know yet how much I was going to need to remember it. For the first part of that taping, Darius Cole was genuinely charming. I say that plainly because it is true, and because this story does not work if you think it was obvious from the beginning. He had warmth when he turned it on, real warmth, the athletic kind, the kind that comes from years of teammates and locker rooms, and the specific generosity that develops in a man who has had to rely on other people and has been good at it. He was funny. He was quick. He engaged with the audience in a way that was easy and natural, and the crowd responded immediately and completely. Dorothy, in the fourth row, was laughing with her granddaughter. The real laugh, both of them. The matching laugh of two women from the same family who have the same laugh and know it and love it about each other. For 20 minutes, that was the show. And then we moved into a segment that involved a question about his career, his rise, his first season, the people who had supported him, and something shifted. Not all at once. He started talking about what he deserved, not in those words. He never used those words directly. But the shape of what he was saying was that shape, the accounting, the ledger, the list of things the world had under-delivered on relative to what his talent had purchased. He said it all pleasantly. He smiled through every word of it. The temperature of the room changed. Slightly, perceptibly. I noticed Dorothy in row 4. She had stopped laughing. The first sign was how he said my name. We were in the middle of a back and forth, and he leaned back slightly in his chair and said, with the smile still on, "You know what's funny, Steve? You and me, we're not that different. We both got here the same way." I said, "How's that?" He said, "Black folks. That's the whole thing. Black folks decided we were worth something, and here we are." I said that was true, and I meant it, and I moved the conversation forward. But he came back to it. 2 minutes later, unprompted, he said, "I always say, you have to respect the community that made you. Because without them, you're nothing. You know what I mean? Without black people deciding you were worth watching, Steve Harvey is just a guy from Cleveland. The audience gave him a sound. Not the full sound of agreement, something smaller. Something that was figuring out what it thought. I said I knew exactly what he meant. I meant that too. But differently than he did. The third moment was the one I could not let pass. We had moved to a different topic, or I thought we had, and he was mid-sentence when he stopped, looked at me directly, and said it. Clearly, with the specific confidence of a man who has been building to something and has decided the room is ready. Honestly, Steve, I think you should be more vocal about what you owe. We made you. Black people made you. You wouldn't have a show, you wouldn't have a brand, you wouldn't have any of this without us putting you there. I'm just saying. Own that. The room went somewhere it had not been all morning. Not silence. Not yet. Something between silence and sound. The held, collective, uncertain breath of 300 people processing whether what they just heard was what they heard. Dorothy in row 4 was not uncertain. She was looking at Darius Cole with an expression I recognized in the marrow of my bones. The expression of a woman who has given something from a real place, not as a transaction, not as an investment, not as leverage, and has just watched it be described as a debt owed to someone else. Before I tell you what I said, and I am going to tell you every word, in the order they came, I need one thing from you. If you believe that love is not the same thing as a ledger, subscribe to this channel right now and turn on the bell. Not for me. For Dorothy in row 4, who took a Greyhound bus from Memphis and put on her Sunday hat and sat up straight in that seat and deserved, on that Tuesday morning, to be in a room where someone said out loud what her watching and her loyalty and her love actually was. Tap subscribe. Then come right back. Dead silence. The kind that comes not from shock but from 300 people arriving, at the same instant, at the same understanding. In row 4, Dorothy's hands had gone still over her pocketbook. Her granddaughter was watching me. The whole room was watching me. Not to see what I would do to Darius Cole. To see what I believed. 9 seconds. I know the count. I have watched the tape. 9 seconds from the moment his last word landed to the moment I spoke. 3 things moved through me. In order. The first was the comedian. 40 years of stages and microphones, and the specific skill of knowing how to use a room when the room needs using. I had a response in my mouth before he finished his sentence. Sharp, specific, the kind of thing that would have made 300 people rise to their feet and would have been played on every platform for a month and would have felt, in the moment, exactly like justice. I did not say it. I did not perform for the room. Because the room was not what needed protecting. The second thing was my mother. Eloise Harvey grew up in Welch, West Virginia, and she watched television in a house that got cold in the winter, and she pointed at the screen when she saw black people on it, and she said, every time, the same thing to her children. She said, "Look. Look at what we can do. Not look at what they can do. We, the specific, stubborn, unconditional we of a woman who understood that the pride she felt watching a stranger on a screen was not about that stranger. It was about all of them. It was about what was possible. It was about the door being open instead of closed. She was not making a transaction. She was witnessing a possibility. That is what Dorothy in row 4 had come 8 hours on a Greyhound to do. Not to pay a debt, not to service an account. To witness something she believed in. To be in the room with something that made her feel that the door was open instead of closed. That is not the same as owing someone. That is the most generous thing one human being can offer another. And the third thing I felt, clearly and without any confusion, was the specific weight of that generosity. The grandmother from Memphis in the Sunday hat. The father in Birmingham who says your name to his son. The teenage girl in Chicago who laughs for 22 minutes and feels like the world made room for her. I thought about all of them. And I thought about the distance between what they gave and what this young man had just called it. I made a decision. I did not stand up. I want you to notice that. Every other moment in this story where I have described standing up, walking across a stage, moving toward something, this was not that. I stayed exactly where I was. I set my microphone on my knee. And I spoke to him the way you speak to someone when you want the words to land rather than the delivery. I said, I want to make sure I understand what you just said. You said, black people made me. You said, I owe them. He nodded, still smiling, still certain. I said, here's what I know to be true. I grew up watching my mother point at a television screen and say, look at what we can do. Not look at what he can do. We. You understand the difference I am drawing? He did not answer. I said, the people in this room did not make me the way a factory makes something. They did not invest in me the way you invest in a stock. They watched me because something in what I was doing made them feel seen, made them feel like the door was open. And they gave me something for that, something real and deep and costly, the way all real things are costly, and I do not take that lightly. Not for 1 second of my life do I take that lightly. I paused. I said, but that is not a debt. That is a gift. And the difference between those two things is the whole thing. A debt means they are owed something back. A gift means they gave it freely, from a place of genuine love, and what you do with it, the only right thing, the only decent thing, is you carry it carefully, and you try to be worthy of it every single day. I looked at him for a moment. Then I said, what you just described, the accounting, the ledger, the idea that black people watching my show were making a transaction they need you to collect on, that is not love. That is not community. That is a young man who has confused being loved with being owed. The room was completely still. I did not raise my voice. I did not point. I did not look at the cameras once. I looked at Darius Cole. He was not smiling anymore. Not angry. Not defensive. Something quieter than both. The expression of a young man who has just heard something he did not expect to hear. Something that reached past the performance of his certainty and touched something underneath it that did not have a ready answer. I held his eyes for 3 more seconds. Then, I turned away from him. I looked out at the audience, and I said, in a different voice, not the voice for him, the voice for them, I see you. Every single one of you who got up this morning and came here and brought your love into this building, I see it. And I am grateful, not obligated. Grateful. There is a difference, and I know which one you deserve. In row 4, Dorothy pressed both hands over her heart. Her granddaughter reached over and took her arm. The room came up. If you are still with me, share this video right now with one person who needs to hear the difference between being loved and being owed. One share. Then come right back. Because what arrived at my production office 3 weeks after that Tuesday is the only ending this story deserves. Darius Cole finished the segment. I want you to know that. He did not walk off. He did not make a scene. When the taping resumed, he was quieter, and he answered what was asked of him, and at the end, when I thanked him and the audience applauded, He nodded at me once. Not a performance, not for the cameras, a single private nod. The kind that means something was received. I do not know what he did with it. That is his work to do, not mine. What I want to tell you about is Dorothy. After the show, during the audience exit, one of my producers found me on the floor and told me there was a woman who wanted to say something. Not a photograph, not an autograph, just something she needed to say. I went. Dorothy was standing near the exit with her granddaughter. She still had the Sunday hat on. She was holding her pocketbook in both hands, and she was looking at me with the expression of a woman who has organized what she wants to say and intends to say it clearly. She said, "I came from Memphis." I said, "I know. I saw you come in." She said, "I have watched your show for 11 years. Every morning, before work." My granddaughter grew up watching it with me. She glanced at the young woman beside her. She's 19 now. I said she was welcome on the show anytime. Dorothy said, what you said in there, about the gift, not the debt. She stopped for a moment. Not because she had lost the words. Because she was making sure she had the right ones. That is exactly right. That is exactly what it is. I never had a word for it before, but that is exactly what it is. She reached out, and she took my hand in both of hers. She said, "We give it because we love you." That's all. That's the whole thing. I did not say anything for a moment. Then I said, "I know. And I carry it that way. I promise you I carry it that way." She nodded once. Then she and her granddaughter walked out into the Atlanta afternoon. 3 weeks later, a card arrived at the production office. Handwritten, Memphis postmark. 4 sentences in the careful, deliberate script of a woman who writes with intention. The last sentence said, "My granddaughter has started watching you on her own now, in her apartment, every morning before class. I think she is going to be all right." I put that card in the drawer where I keep the things that were not written for me but needed me to read them. Dorothy's granddaughter is 19 years old. She watches the show every morning before class. That is not a transaction. That is everything. So let me bring you back to where we started. There is a difference between a man who is grateful and a man who keeps score. The man who is grateful knows what was given to him. He knows it was given freely. From a place of real love, at real cost, by people who had every reason to hold on to what little they had and chose instead to give it away to a stranger on a screen because that stranger made them feel like the door was open instead of closed. And he carries that. Every day, he carries it. Not as a weight, as a reason, as the thing that gets him up in the morning and keeps him honest and makes him want to be every single day worthy of what he was given. The man who keeps score has the same information and has done something different with it. He has converted love into leverage. He has taken the gift and called it a debt. He has looked out at the people who gave him the most generous thing one human being can give another, genuine belief, genuine pride, genuine joy on his behalf, and he has said, "You owe me." That is not a small mistake. But it is a correctable one. Darius Cole is 26 years old. He has time. He has more than time. What I know for certain is that there are 300 people who came to my studio on a Tuesday morning in January, and a woman who took a Greyhound bus 8 hours from Memphis with her granddaughter and put on her Sunday hat, who deserved to be in a room where someone said out loud what their love actually was. Not a transaction. A gift. the most generous kind. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you of the difference between gratitude and debt, and which one you want to carry, do 3 things before you leave. Subscribe to this channel. Because the stories about what it means to be worthy of the love you have been given deserve to be heard by more people than the algorithm decided. Share this with one person in your life who has given their love and their loyalty to someone and deserves to know that what they gave was a gift, not an investment, and that giving it made them more, not less. And drop a heart in the comments for Dorothy. 71 years old. 8 hours on a Greyhound. Sunday hat. Hands pressed over her heart in row 4. Her granddaughter watches the show every morning before class now. She is going to be all right. God bless Dorothy. God bless every grandmother who ever pointed at a television screen and said, "Look at what we can do." Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I'll see you in the next one.